They won't tell you they're testing you. They won't announce it. They won't explain it. They won't even admit it to themselves. But the truth is, the avoidant is always watching. Not in the way that feels obvious, not in the way that makes you feel seen, but in the way that makes you feel like something invisible is happening, something you can't quite name. Because with every silence, with every step back, with every wall they build between you, they are running an experiment, and you, without even knowing it, are the subject. When people hear the word test, they often think of something clear, a question on paper, an exam you can prepare for, a set of rules where the answers are either right or wrong. But the avoidance test is different. It has no instructions, no preparation, and worst of all, you only realize you've been tested when you've already failed. Here's what makes it more complicated. The avoidant doesn't test you out of cruelty. They test you out of fear. Because to them, love is not safety. Love is risk. Closeness is not comfort. Closeness is danger. Intimacy is not reward. Intimacy is a setup for loss. So instead of stepping fully into love, instead of simply allowing themselves to trust, they create hidden trials, moments that measure not your love, but their safety. It can feel maddening. You try your best to show up. You give patience. You give kindness. You give reassurance. But they don't measure those things directly. What they measure is subtler, more hidden, more unfair. They measure what you do when they retreat. They measure how you react when they turn cold. They measure whether you'll chase when they suddenly stop walking toward you. The avoidant doesn't say, "Prove you won't abandon me." Instead, they pull away and wait to see if you notice. They don't say, "Show me I'm safe with you." Instead, they close off and watch how you respond to their silence. They don't say, "Convince me love isn't danger." Instead, they push you to the edge of distance and see whether you lean in or walk away. To the avoidant, this feels logical. It feels protective. It feels like survival. Because in their world, words can't be trusted. Promises don't hold. Declarations of love are fragile and can shatter without warning. So instead of listening to your words, they look for signs, not the ones you think matter, but the ones you don't even realize you're giving. Your sigh when they go quiet, your frown when they don't text back, your tears when they retreat. These aren't just emotions to them. They're data, proof, at least in their mind. That closeness is dangerous. But here's the paradox. Every test the avoidant creates is designed to protect them from loss. And yet, every test also guarantees the very loss they fear. Because no one can pass an exam they're never told they're taking. No one can succeed when the rules keep changing. No one can love without breaking under invisible weight. And so, the avoidant watches. They study you. They gather evidence. But what they don't realize is that the evidence they're collecting isn't proof that you're unsafe. It's proof that their fear is running the relationship. Proof that they've mistaken love for danger. Proof that they've confused closeness for a trap. Think about it. When you love an avoidant, you find yourself caught in a double bind. If you lean in too much, they see it as suffocation. If you step back, they see it as abandonment. If you stay calm, they assume you don't care enough. If you react emotionally, they assume you're unstable. Every move you make feels wrong because the test you're taking was never about you. It was always about their past. The avoidance hidden tests aren't measuring you. They're measuring the ghosts of what they once lived. The parent who left, the caregiver who scolded closeness, the childhood moment where love meant pain. Every retreat is less about you and more about replaying that old survival script. And here's the part that cuts deepest. Even when you pass their test, They often don't believe it. You wait patiently through their silence. You hold steady when they withdraw. You stay kind even when they push you away. And still, they whisper to themselves, maybe this won't last. Maybe they'll leave later. Maybe I just haven't been hurt yet. The test never ends. Because to the avoidant, certainty never comes. But let's be clear. This isn't about you being not enough. This isn't about you failing to love well. It's about the avoidant being trapped in an equation they never stop solving. To them, every moment of closeness must be balanced with distance. Every step forward must be countered by a step back. Every rush of warmth must be cooled by cold withdrawal. Because in their world, love is not trust, love is tension. And so, the avoidant tests you, not with words, not with open requests, but with silence, with withdrawal, with coldness, each time asking, without asking, will you prove me wrong? Or will you confirm my fears? But here's what no one tells you. There is no way to win a hidden test. Not when the rules are made by fear. Not when the game was built to protect, not connect. And yet, underneath it all, there's something the avoidant won't admit. Every test they create is not just a way of measuring safety. It's also a quiet, desperate hope. A hope that one day, someone will stay. Someone will understand. Someone will not turn their silence into goodbye. So when they test you, it's not just defense. It's also longing. Because even as they push you away, they are watching, waiting, wondering, will you still be here? This is the hidden truth about avoidant love. It isn't that they don't care. It isn't that they don't feel. It's that they feel so much. That closeness burns. And so they build walls. And then, without ever saying it, they test who is strong enough, patient enough, safe enough to stand on the other side. But here's the cost. Testing is not the same as trusting. And until the avoidant learns to risk real trust, love will always feel like war. And no one wins in a war where the heart is always under suspicion. That's the opening. That's the secret most never see. The avoidant doesn't test you with questions. They test you with silence, with space, with distance. And while you may feel like you're failing, what's really failing is their old survival strategy, a strategy that kept them safe in the past, but now keeps them from love in the present. And this is where the story begins. You might wonder, why would someone who wants love make it feel so impossible? Why would someone who longs for closeness create distance at every turn? Why would someone who secretly hopes to be chosen design tests that almost guarantee rejection? It doesn't make sense until you understand the mind of the avoidant. For the avoidant, love feels like fire. It can warm, it can give life, it can light up the dark, but it can also burn. It can consume. It can destroy everything it touches. So when they reach for love, they reach with hesitation, with fear, with one hand ready to pull back. To you, their retreat feels cruel. It feels cold. It feels like rejection. But to them, retreat is strategy. Retreat is survival. Retreat is the only way they know how to keep themselves intact. Because here's their truth. Closeness never felt safe. In childhood, closeness often came with conditions. Love meant obligation. Love meant control. Love meant giving up pieces of themselves just to keep the connection. So now, as adults, their body remembers. Every step toward intimacy triggers alarms. Every moment of vulnerability sets off internal sirens screaming, danger, don't go further, protect yourself. And so, the test begins. It's not a conscious choice. It's a reflex, a nervous system response carved deep into them. When they feel you getting closer, their body whispers, test it. Test if this love is safe. Test if this person will stay. Test if closeness means losing myself again. The ways they test vary. Sometimes it's silence. They stop texting back. They take longer to respond. They disappear into their own world. Other times, it's criticism. They pick at your words. They highlight your flaws. They create friction where there doesn't need to be any. And sometimes, it's withdrawal, pulling back from physical affection, closing off emotionally, acting indifferent when inside they're full of feeling. To you, these behaviors feel like sabotage, like they're destroying what you've worked so hard to build. But to them, it feels like gathering proof. They think, if they really love me, they'll stay even if I pull away. If they really care, they'll chase even when I turn cold. If they really want me, they'll endure the silence. But here's the irony. These tests don't bring them closer to the answer they want. Instead, they bring them further from the love they crave. Because love built on constant testing can never feel safe. Love cannot thrive in suspicion. Love cannot grow in interrogation. Love cannot survive when one heart is always on trial. And yet, the avoidant keeps repeating the cycle. Why? Because the alternative feels unbearable. To not test, to simply trust, feels like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. It feels reckless. It feels naive. It feels like inviting betrayal straight into their chest. So they test, even though it hurts them, even though it hurts you, even though it kills the very thing they claim they want. This is the heartbreaking paradox of avoidant love. They crave intimacy, but fear it. They want connection, but sabotage it. They long to be chosen, but create conditions that push others away. They want proof that love is safe, but only look for evidence that confirms it isn't. Imagine it like this. You're trying to build a bridge. You bring wood, nails, rope. You put your heart into every plank. But the avoidant keeps testing the bridge. They jump on it before it's finished. They pull pieces off to see if it still stands. They shake it violently, just to check if it will collapse. And when it finally does, they sigh and say, "See, I knew it wouldn't hold," not realizing that their very testing is what made the bridge break. But let's pause here, because it's easy to feel angry at the avoidant. Easy to say, they're toxic, they're selfish, they're cruel. But the truth is more complicated. They aren't trying to hurt you. They aren't trying to play games. They aren't trying to manipulate your love. They are simply trying to survive with the only tools they were ever given. Think back to their early years. If love came with rejection, they learned to brace for it. If closeness meant suffocation, they learned to protect their space. If vulnerability was punished, they learned to build walls. These weren't bad choices. They were necessary ones. They were choices that kept a child alive. Choices that kept their heart from shattering. Choices that, at the time, made perfect sense. But here's the tragedy. The same defenses that protected them then are the same defenses that sabotage them now. What once was survival has now become self-destruction. The walls they built to keep pain out are now the walls that keep love out. The tests they once used to measure danger are now the very reasons intimacy collapses. So when the avoidant tests you, they aren't just testing you. They are reliving their past. They are replaying their old wounds. They are trying, in a twisted way, to rewrite a story that once ended in pain. They are asking questions they don't know how to ask out loud. Will you stay when I push you away? Will you love me even when I'm distant? Will you see me even when I hide? And if you stay, they feel a flicker of safety. But the flicker doesn't last, because their mind whispers, "This is temporary. Soon, they'll leave. Soon, I'll be exposed. Soon, I'll be hurt again." So they create another test, and another, and another. until the relationship feels less like love and more like a battlefield. But here's what most don't realize. The avoidant isn't looking for you to fail. Deep down, they're hoping you'll pass. They're hoping you'll break the cycle. They're hoping you'll prove them wrong. Because as much as they fear intimacy, they long for it too. As much as they resist closeness, they ache for it in the quiet of their nights. As much as they push you away, they secretly hope you'll hold on. This is the double life of the avoidant test. On the outside, walls, silence, distance. On the inside, a heart whispering, "Please don't leave me. Please show me love can be safe. Please prove I'm not too much or not enough." The truth is, the avoidant test isn't about you. It's about them. It's about fear wearing the mask of logic. It's about longing wrapped in defense. It's about a broken heart, still trying to make sense of love. And this is why their tests feel so cruel. Because you're not just fighting for their trust. You're fighting against their history, against their memories, against their nervous system. You're not just in a relationship with who they are. You're in a relationship with everything they've lived. And here's where most people break. Because carrying someone's unspoken tests can feel unbearable. It can feel like drowning in someone else's fears. It can feel like you're always being measured, always being watched, always being found lacking. And eventually, even the most patient heart starts to wonder, how long can I keep proving myself to someone who refuses to believe me? And that question, that quiet exhaustion, is where love often falters. Because no matter how much you love the avoidant, you cannot love away their fear. No matter how steady you are, you cannot erase their past. No matter how much proof you give, you cannot change a test. That was never meant to end. And yes, beneath all this, there's still hope. Because while the avoidant tests are powerful, they are not permanent. The same defenses that were learned can be unlearned. The same tests that were built can be dismantled. The same fear that once ruled can be softened by love. But not just love from another person. It has to be love from themselves too. And that is the part of the story most people miss. The avoidant doesn't just need someone patient enough to stay. They need to become someone brave enough to heal. Until then, the tests continue. The cycle repeats. The walls rise again. And you are left wondering, do they even want love? Or do they only want safety? But deep down, the truth remains. They want both. They've always wanted both. The only question is, will they learn that the two can finally exist together? The avoidance tests are not designed to measure your love. They are designed to measure your threat. Every move you make, every word you say, every silence you hold becomes part of the equation. Their nervous system is always calculating. They are not asking, "Do you love me?" They are asking, "Will your love hurt me?" And this difference changes everything. Because what looks like cruelty, what feels like indifference, what comes across as coldness, is, in truth, a desperate strategy. They push you away, not to see if you will leave, but to see if you will still remain present, without suffocating them. They delay answering your messages, not because you don't matter, but because responding immediately feels like giving away power. And power, in their world, is survival. They cancel plans, not because they didn't want to see you, but because the closer the meeting becomes, the louder their body screams. Too much, too soon, too close. To you, it feels personal. To them, it feels like safety. And the cruelest part? They don't always know. They're even doing it. So when the avoidant tests you, it's often unconscious. A reflex buried in old wounds. A script written long before you ever arrived. But here is the secret. Few understand. Their tests are not random. They follow patterns. And if you watch closely enough, you begin to see them. The first pattern is withdrawal. They pull back, right when things feel good. Moments of laughter, moments of closeness, moments of intimacy, all suddenly met with silence, with absence, with cold distance. This is not about you doing something wrong. This is about their nervous system, interpreting joy itself as a potential trap, because somewhere long ago, joy turned into disappointment, connection turned into pain, love turned into loss. So when you give them closeness, they test if you can handle their distance. They want to know, will you chase? Will you collapse? Or will you stay steady, without demanding they return, before they are ready? The second pattern is contradiction. They say they want honesty, but when you tell them how you feel, they retreat. They say they want connection, but when you give them consistency, they resist. They say they want love, but when you show it, they flinch. And this contradiction is not because they don't care. It is because caring terrifies them. So they test. Will your love overwhelm me? Will your truth punish me? Will your presence control me? The third pattern is control through silence. For the avoidant, silence is not emptiness. It is power. It is the only space where they feel untouchable. So when they fall quiet, not for minutes, but for hours, sometimes for days, it is not just a disappearance. It is a test. Will you respect their silence? Will you push against it? Will you weaponize it back at them? Because deep down, what they fear most is that silence will be used against them. That if they open up, you will vanish and leave them holding the weight alone. So they test you with silence to see if you can survive the absence. The fourth pattern is boundary exaggeration. They create walls higher than necessary. They enforce limits sharper than reality. They tell you, I don't like clingy people. I need more space than most. I'm not sure I'm ready for a relationship. And they say these things, not always because they are true, but because they are watching. Will you trample their walls? Or will you respect them, even when those walls feel extreme? The fifth pattern is comparison. They bring up past partners, not to hurt you, but to measure how you respond. They mention their independence, their need for freedom, their love for solitude, not to reject you, but to see if you panic at the idea of not being needed. Because their deepest terror is not being alone, it is being consumed. So their tests are always tilted toward this one question: will you erase me, or will you let me exist without losing yourself? And this is where most people misunderstand. They believe passing the test means proving loyalty, proving patience, proving love. But that is not what the avoidant is searching for. They are not watching to see if you will love them more. They are watching to see if your love will suffocate them less. Because in their world, love has always equaled danger. So every time you stay calm, every time you respect their space, every time you hold your own center, you rewrite their nervous system script. It doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen in one test. It happens in hundreds of micro moments where they expect punishment, but instead find patience, where they expect pressure, but instead find presence. Slowly, the tests become less about threat and more about trust. But until then, you must understand this. The avoidance tests are not about you failing them. They are about their body failing to believe it is finally safe. And that's the cruel paradox. The very person they secretly long to trust is the very person they end up testing the most. Because to them, the closer you come, the higher the stakes. And so every silence, every withdrawal, every contradiction, every wall, every comparison is their way of asking, without ever saying it aloud, can your love survive my fear? When you reach this point with the avoidant, the tests no longer feel small. They begin to feel like storms. One moment, you are laughing together, feeling connected, feeling like maybe, finally, the walls are coming down. The next, you are standing in silence, wondering what changed, wondering why the warmth suddenly froze into ice. And here's the truth most people miss. This shift isn't about you. It isn't about something you said wrong. It isn't about your love not being enough. It is about their nervous system hitting its breaking point, because closeness to the avoidant is like holding fire, beautiful, alive, comforting for a moment. But the longer they hold it, the more they fear it will burn them. So they drop it, fast, abrupt, without warning. And this dropping, this sudden withdrawal, is one of their biggest tests. They want to know, when I disappear, will you rage? Will you chase? Will you shame me? Or will you breathe and wait for me to return on my own terms? To you, it feels cruel. To them, it feels necessary. Because their whole life, love has been paired with danger. So when you love them, their body goes searching for the catch. Their heart listens for the betrayal. Their mind anticipates the loss. And so the withdrawal isn't about rejecting you. It is about confirming a fear they've carried forever. That love cannot last. But here's the paradox. The more they withdraw, the lonelier they feel. The lonelier they feel, the more they crave closeness. The more they crave closeness, the more they fear being consumed. This loop becomes the silent mathematics of their tests. So how does this play out in real life? It plays out in text messages left unanswered, in plans canceled last minute, in sudden silence after intimacy, in contradictions. I miss you one day, I need space the next. Every contradiction is a test. Every silence is a test. Every retreat is a test, not of your love, but of your steadiness. Because here is what the avoidant longs for, but cannot say. I need to know that I can pull away and still be safe with you. They are terrified that if they open the door, they will lose themselves inside your love. So they test. Will you try to control me? Will you punish me? Will you demand what I cannot yet give? And the tragic part? Most people fail the test, not because they are unloving, but because they take the test personally. They believe the silence means rejection. They believe the withdrawal means disinterest. They believe the contradictions mean manipulation. And so they push back. They argue. They demand answers. They chase for reassurance. But this chasing only confirms the avoidant's deepest fear. That love equals pressure. That love equals control. And so the cycle repeats. But here's the hidden truth. When the avoidant tests you, they are not hoping you'll fail. They are secretly hoping you'll pass. Because if you pass, something begins to shift. If you can hold steady while they retreat, they begin to see that maybe closeness doesn't have to consume them. If you can respond with calm instead of panic, they begin to feel that maybe connection can exist without control. If you can respect their silence without making it war, they begin to wonder if maybe, just maybe, love doesn't always have to be dangerous. And this is where transformation begins. Because while the avoidant tests you, what they're really testing is possibility. The possibility that love could feel different this time. The possibility that closeness might not equal suffocation. The possibility that someone could stand in the storm with them, not by tearing down their walls, but by quietly proving that the walls don't need to be so high. But this takes time, and this takes patience, because every test you pass does not erase the past. It only softens it, bit by bit, moment by moment. The avoidant is not looking for proof in words. They are looking for proof and consistency. They need to see that your steadiness is not a performance, that your calm is not a tactic, that your presence is not a trick, because they've seen performance before. They've seen tactics before. They've seen tricks before. And every time, the ending was the same: abandonment. So they test again and again until their body begins to learn that maybe this time it's different. And here is the heartbreaking beauty: if you can withstand the test long enough, you may be the one who shows them that safety is possible. But if you cannot, if the tests break you, if you chase or punish or collapse, they retreat further, not because you were unworthy, but because their body tells them, "See, I was right all along. Love cannot be safe." That is why the avoidance tests matter. Not because they are fair. They're not. Not because they are easy. They're brutal. But because they are the only language their fear knows how to speak. And if you can learn to hear it, if you can learn to see beyond the silence, if you can learn to hold steady in the storm, then something begins to shift that no words could ever achieve. The avoidant begins to trust. Not quickly, not fully, but slowly. And for someone who has lived their whole life, believing trust is a trap, that slow shift is everything. Because for the first time, their tests don't feel like survival. They begin to feel like surrender. And surrender, for the avoidant, is the first step toward real love. There comes a point when the tests slow down, not because the avoidant has stopped fearing, but because something inside of them begins to shift. It is subtle at first, barely noticeable, like the way a frozen river cracks before it begins to thaw. They may still pull away, but not as far. They may still go silent, but not as long. They may still question your intentions, but a small part of them is starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you are different. And this is where the quiet miracle happens. Because for the avoidant, the greatest test of all is not when they pull away, it is when they come closer. Closeness is the risk. Closeness is the danger. Closeness is the fire they've always been burned by. So when they allow themselves to inch closer, when they risk vulnerability, when they let you see even a glimpse of the world behind their walls, that is the truest test of all. It is not a test you pass with words. It is not a test you pass with effort. It is a test you pass with presence. Because when they show you what they've hidden, what they've protected, what they've buried, they are watching you more closely than ever. They are asking in silence, will you use this against me? Will you turn this into control? Will you confirm my worst fear? That love equals danger. And your answer isn't in what you say, it's in what you do. Do you meet their honesty with gentleness? Do you meet their fear with steadiness? Do you meet their vulnerability with protection rather than pressure? Because this is the final paradox. The avoidant tests you most, not in distance, but in closeness. They need to know that when they finally stop running, they will not regret it. And if you can hold them there, if you can let them breathe inside connection without feeling trapped, if you can show them that intimacy doesn't have to consume, that love doesn't have to suffocate, that closeness can be soft, not sharp, then you give them something they have never had before. Safety, not the safety of space, not the safety of silence, not the safety of walls, the safety of presence, the safety of being known and still accepted, the safety of being loved, without strings, without demands, without a hidden trap. And when that happens, their nervous system begins to rewrite its story. Slowly, the old belief, love is danger, starts to lose its grip. Slowly, the walls they built so carefully begin to lower. not because you tore them down, but because they no longer feel necessary. Slowly, they begin to taste a new kind of love, one that does not punish them for needing space, one that does not shame them for moving slow, one that does not collapse under their fear, but instead walks beside it. This is not quick work. This is not easy work, but it is the work of transformation. And here is the most beautiful part. When the avoidant finally feels safe, when they finally stop testing, when they finally trust, they love deeply, they love loyally, they love with a devotion that surprises even them. Because beneath the fear, beneath the silence, beneath the distance, the avoidant has always longed for what they could not admit, to be held, to be seen, to be loved, not for what they protect, but for who they are. When the protection is gone, that is the gift of passing their tests. That is the reward for patience, for steadiness, for choosing presence over pressure. And that is why, even though their silence hurts, even though their contradictions confuse, even though their distance feels unfair, their tests are not the end of the story. They are only the beginning. Because what they hide in testing you is not rejection, it is hope. Hope that maybe this time, love could feel different. Hope that maybe this time, they will not be abandoned. Hope that maybe this time, they can rest. And if you are willing, if you are steady, if you are gentle enough to pass, you will not just win their trust, you will help them discover that love can finally be safe. And maybe this is where it matters most. Because you, too, deserve a love that doesn't keep you guessing. You deserve a love that doesn't test you with silence and retreat. You deserve a love that feels mutual, that feels nourishing, that feels alive. So if you are walking through this with someone, remember, their tests are not about your worth. They are about their fear. And if you are the one who is avoidant, remember, your tests are not protection. They are distance from the very thing you long for. And healing begins the moment you realize that love is not the enemy. Love is not the trap. Love is not the fire. Love is the safe ground you never knew was waiting for you. If this spoke to you, take a moment to reflect. Share this with someone who needs to hear it too. Because the more we understand the language of the avoidant, the more we can transform relationships, not by force, not by fear, but by creating the kind of safety that finally makes love possible.